Good evening, everybody. Rob Mazak here. I am a psychic medium and I do a lot of really cool metaphysical type services. That's not really what we're here to talk about. It is more about validation and puzzle pieces coming together, connecting dots. It's just amazing what happens if you really stick to a journey, a spiritual journey, an ascension journey, a waking up journey, whatever you like to call it. There's a lot of clever names for it these days where you just really kind of get into that mindfulness and meditation mode and you get to witness and experience so many cool things. Not that you could prove these things per se. If you wait long enough and you look hard enough and you pay attention enough, those things can be validated for you. At least for you, this can become a truth or your truth. And the things I talk about in these things are not being discussed because I want to prove them to you, because I can't do that. Nobody can really prove what they believe, honestly. And it is very difficult to convince somebody outside of what they perceive as truth. So, what I want to talk about is some experiences and some of the validation I got tonight watching a video. So, I was randomly scrolling through Facebook Reels, I believe it is. I started seeing clips by a fella that was interviewing Richard Doty. Richard Doty has been around for a while. He talks a lot about UFOs and a lot of those alternative things like that, secret space programs, on and on and on. I mean, I don't know a lot about him, probably not doing justice to his name, but you can always go look it up if you like. But he's an expert in many ways on the topic of things like that are outside of the norm, I guess you'd say. In this case, he was being interviewed about our reversed engineering of UFO crashes and the fact that we have particular entities from these crashes that have been working with us here to help reverse engineer these things and help with the rise in technology. I know that sounds far out. It is being discussed a whole lot more than it used to be these days. Long ago, when I was a kid and when my father was a kid, boy, it was just something you didn't talk about. People would put you in a nut house, right? But nowadays, it seems to be a lot more prevalent. People aren't afraid to talk about it. And I believe that a lot more of these types of events are showing up. People are capturing them on their phones, and they're telling stories and they're witness to a lot of different things. But one of the things he was talking about in this video, the video was called 80,000 Years Ahead, dot, 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 Earth is Gone. And it was about the fact that we had a downed UFO that came somewhere shortly after we started using atomic and nuclear bombs. That is very well documented that there's a lot more sightings and a lot more of that activity happened soon after that. And apparently a lot of the crash sites and the aliens that were living that we, I guess, kept as guests, we'll call it that, were conveying, once we figured out how to communicate with them, that they did start to poke around, because apparently that type of weapon has been used before, apparently, in many different historical events, and it was, I guess, banned and removed from war across the universe, or our known universe, I guess you'd say. And when they discovered that we were using it, they became very concerned. And apparently, it does send shockwaves and shake the universe when we use those kind of things. At least according to Dolores Cannon, who was one I learned my hypnosis practice through, who kind of learned these things over many, many years of doing sessions. But anyway, they started showing up. It's hard for me to imagine that somebody or an entity that comes from a place that could actually travel to Earth in these high technological type craft could find themselves crashing. I don't know how that works. It just seems a little odd. Maybe we shot them down. I don't know. But regardless, this particular entity they named J Rod. I don't know why they named it J Rod, but it has been a guest, according to this guy, at Area 51 originally. I don't know if and where that particular entity is now. I don't know if he's still with us, if that's true, of course. My understanding through this story is that we were able to, with his help, develop craft that could apparently find wormholes or quantum tunnels and knew where they were and would help us build these craft that could reach these particular portals. And these portals could take you back in time, forward in time, or simply just skip across the universe a very short time when our conventional speed and abilities that we know about would take many, many lifetimes, if not more, to reach some of these places at the technology that we have been shown. And apparently, one of these stories, well, I guess it was probably from I want to say it was 1994, is what he was quoting it from. Back when our technology really wasn't superb at the time. But apparently, this alien helped us develop a craft that was consciously driven and very, very high technologically developed and built. Anyway, what apparently happened was that this entity helped them figure out where a portal was somewhere around Venus, between here and Venus. They found their way through this portal, and then they found themselves 80,000 years in the future, in the same area where technically the portal was, but 80,000 years in the future at that point, which doesn't make sense to me entirely, but and so they were in apparently 80,000 years ahead in our solar system. And apparently they recognized all the planets, but apparently Earth was not there. And in its place were a bunch of smaller globes or Earths inside a protected kind of dome or like a snow globe idea. And that they didn't really quote the number, but there was a whole bunch of them apparently. And there were a bunch of different civilizations within these particular contained globes. Somewhere in the mix, somehow they were able to communicate, and they opened it up to them to come in, and they spent, I guess, like 9 months or something there and learned a lot of things. The story is just being laid out for you guys because when I saw or heard about all these individual Earths or planets inside some kind of contained globe, it brought me back to visions that I've had many times. But originally it was probably 6-7 years ago when I first really started my journey, and I was shown what, in the words of my guide at the time, said that this is what reality really is. And they were showing me that very same thing, although it was represented underwater. The reality that I was being pulled out of and looked down on was in fact an Earth or an Earth-like structure that was contained in a round, like clear globe. And it was surrounded by many, many others, almost in like a grape cluster. But in that particular vision, it was set in water. where it was represented in a very, very calm body of water underneath the surface. The top of the surface was like crystal clear, still like a mirror. And it wasn't exactly like it was represented in this story where it was in space. But if you've looked at any alternative ideas about space and NASA, a lot of the conspiracy theories are wrapped around the fact that what we might be seeing in the videos they present to us is actually underwater space walks, if you will. And they've shown a lot of videos that make sense that it might be that. It could also just be training videos, because to train in space, training underwater makes a lot of sense. The movement and the buoyancy and the suits and all that stuff, it could make a lot of sense. But it just completely struck me that, if you stick with your beliefs and your journey long enough, you will begin to see things that validate, at least for you, maybe not anybody else, but validate for you that what you have seen before, it might just be actuality. And it just really blew me away. And, that also makes sense in what Dolores Cannon says. We mentioned that her name here earlier in this video. She had a lot of experience doing hypnosis over many, many years, connecting with the other side, hearing messages and conglomerating commonalities and trends and things like that. And one of the things that was very strong towards the end of her life she was getting was that there would be a move to a new earth, that the earth would literally divide, and there would be different populations that would be with or on or in each of these different earths, or different realities in this case, I guess. But that's also kind of what the story of Richard Doty was saying, is that apparently they knew the earth was going to be destroyed, or there was a calamity coming, or a calamity that had happened, and that these particular earths that were protected in these globes were developed in order for a human species to continue and not die out. And this also, in my mind, relates to the possibility of new earths. Now, the visual they had in the video made it even better for me, because what they showed is almost identical to what I had seen before. So I guess what I'm getting at here is that people ask for signs all the time. They ask for validation. What am I supposed to be doing? Is what I'm thinking, what I'm getting in dreams, or what all these crazy thoughts that keep popping in my mind, things that don't make sense that I would never share with anybody. Of course I do, but I haven't always been that way. Do these things make sense? Are they real? Do they mean anything to me? Should I even bother with that? And, even try to chase that down or make sense of it? I would say yes, because there's so many examples that I could give you guys of things that have been validated for me years after, many times. For example, I had a sequence of numbers that popped in a dream for me, 5723, over and over and over all night long. I mean, many of you guys have probably had the same thing. My brother just had the same experience not long ago, right? And it didn't make any sense to me what this number meant. I researched it up and looked at angel numbers and all these things, and it kind of made sense, and it kind of didn't. But I held on to it. I wrote it down. I started using it for my pins and different things so that I wouldn't forget the number. And let me tell you, I've said this in other podcasts, but it has showed up and validated itself so many times through my life that to me, it just can't be a coincidence. How can information that you've seen separated by what we would consider time in years, and many times, in this case of these numbers, 1 year, 3 years, 8 years later, how can that actually happen if it wasn't true or had some shred of truth in it? I think that really we have to remember that Truth in our mind, or in our minds, in our brains, in our consciousness, really comes down to what we accept to believe. And I think we are introduced or given many different things to challenge our current perception. And many of us just ignore it as just fantasy, or drink it away, or spend our time doing things that don't make any sense. Nothing against sports, but sitting down watching football for, the entire day on Sunday, when, there could be so many things streaming in. We just don't simply pay attention enough, in my opinion. I'm not saying don't do those things. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying people that do that are bad. I'm just saying I think if we would just take the time to be a little more attentive, I guess you'd say, mindful about what's going on, stop more times in our day and pay attention to what's around us and what's going on and the information that's showing up. A license plate in front of you that has your initials of your name followed by 4 numbers. What do those 4 numbers mean? There was a day when I saw like 5 of them, and they all had different numbers. And when I looked up all the angel numbers and the spiritual meanings of these numbers, they all kind of related to the same idea. Is that my mind's or my subconscious's attempt to move me forward and give me a new direction? Is that coming from outside of us? I don't know that it really matters. I think that is a combination of things. I think we are completely connected to everything there is, and we simply get into patterns and normalities and same old habits every day, and we don't really go out of our way to pay attention and look at different ways information is being presented to us. And even if we see it, we laugh it off, or we just play it off as some kind of imagination. Let me tell you, I don't think that's true. I mean, if I could give you all the experiences that I've ever had of validation throughout the years, it would take a lot more than just this little simple 30-minute podcast, because it happens all the time. Now, did it happen before I started my journey and really start paying attention and learn to meditate, learn to dissect my dreams, research my dreams, messages that show up, really putting the time in to understand what I'm seeing, what I'm getting, and start to put the pieces together. The puzzle starts coming together. Does that mean it's true? No, not necessarily, but it is a way of reshaping my perception into something that apparently I need to shift into. Perhaps my journey is not going quite like it should. It should be going a different direction. I should be thinking a little bit different, putting my efforts in different places. I believe these messages, I would go as far as to say I know these messages are being delivered to us like every second of the day, all the time. For goodness sake, if you look at the science behind what we receive, our consciousness, our minds get bombarded with 11 million bits of information per second. And our conscious mind can only handle 40 bits of information per second, right? But the rest of it goes to the subconscious directly and no filter. And so we are receiving this enormous amount of information being stored at depths that we can't necessarily just pull out when we want to. But perhaps, just perhaps, we may not be getting information outside of ourselves. Let's just, for argument's sake, say we're not. And maybe this is all coming from within us, that everything that we need is embedded in our subconscious, in our DNA, and connected to everything there is. I mean, there's so many ways to describe it, but we have at our fingertips just the most immense and amazing amount of information you can imagine. Looking at our own internet, I mean, you can go on the internet and you can find absolutely anything you want. You search up something and it will be there. There is just so much information at our fingertips. Imagine that by an unlimited amount of exponential growth, right? And look at that as the cosmos storing everything about every being that's ever existed, every experience that's ever happened, all in some database that we can access. Do I know that's true? No, but that's kind of the way I look at it. Because if you look at a lot of different methods that people use to connect for information, that is one way of doing it. Akashic records or the Book of Life, or there's all kinds of ways that people dig into that information. You call it whatever you want, but the information is there. It's always there. And if you really pay attention, you look around and you do your diligence, pay attention, write it down, research it. Don't dismiss it as just some fable or some fiction in your mind, or somebody said is just absolutely off the wall. You're doing yourself a disfavor. If somebody has an idea that they just throw out just seems like absolutely awkward and just way out there, do yourself a favor. Maybe go research it up. Even if you try to debunk it, you may find that there's some truth in what they're saying. So condemnation without investigation is really ignorance, right? So in other words, don't condemn somebody or something that you get until you do your investigation. You will find that the world will just open up to you, and just immense amount of information and experience will come your way. Knowledge that you could never have ever imagined. Journeys through meditation that will take you places that you could probably physically never ever go in this short life we have. It's just amazing the places I've been and the things I've seen through these journeys. And it just makes you such a, I don't know, it just puts you in such awe and appreciation of the amount of experience and information that is available and out there to us if we just latch onto it and just search it up and put some stock into the truth of that. I don't know, it's hard for me to put this into words, as you can hear. We spend so much time in our little bubbles and going to work and coming home and doing the same thing every night, every morning, same rituals, and I fall habit to that as well, because I realize that, I get up in the morning, I do the same things over, exactly the same almost all the time. We got to mix it up sometimes. And I'm not saying that consistency is bad, because consistency can be good as well. But I think, though, that we must find time in our day, in our life, to reflect, connect, listen to the thoughts in our minds, listen to the thoughts in our head, listen to our dreams, listen to our gut feelings, listen to the things, look at the visuals that are coming into our mind, and see if we can do something with that. Because if we really are getting information streaming from us, from somewhere, from someone, from something, everybody has their beliefs. You believe however you like, where you get your guidance from, right? Everybody has a different name, different methodology. Cool. That's okay. But it is coming from somewhere. And I think most of us would agree with that. That most everything that we need comes from outside of us, and is streamed into our consciousness, our minds, so that we can use those things. I mean, if you think about it this way, right? If we supposedly evolved from cave people to the technology that we have now, notwithstanding others coming in and intervening, a cave person would never, I can't imagine, rather, thinking that, well, life would sure be better if I had a cell phone. Life would sure be better if I had a computer. I mean, where do these thoughts come from? Where do these ideas come from? I mean, if you're a cave person, you have everything you need. You have food, you have warmth, you have shelter, you have a mate, you have kids, right? And everything is being met. Where would the idea to come to the place where we're at now come from? It must come from somewhere. And could it be coming from within us, that's built into us, like a computer that slowly evolves, or a program that slowly evolves, self-learns like AI? Who knows? I'm just trying to throw ideas out here to help you guys understand that there is a lot more that we just simply are discounting, and we're doing ourselves a huge disfavor by not utilizing it, locking into it, looking at it, researching it, doing something with it, and helping others to do the same. I also encourage you guys to write these things down, either write them down or record them or something like that, because I can tell you, our memories do fade, our conscious memories anyway, are not as good as we'd like them to be, because I recently was trying to remember a past life regression that I did for myself a while back that was related to Auschwitz, and I just simply could not remember parts of it. And so since I wrote it down and documented, I was able to go back and look at it, recount it, and use it again for a situation that came up. But I strongly encourage you guys, really, really, really strongly encourage you guys to just listen. Just listen. Stop the noise for a change. And take some moments throughout your day and your life to just let things kind of simmer and come through and see what you get. You would just be blown away when you really, really start paying attention. All right. Hey, when you get a chance, pop over to my website when you get a chance. lifebymazak.com, lifebymazak.com. On there, everything you need to know about me and my other half is there. How to contact me, blogs, services, products, all these fun things. I do look forward to working with you all. I do look forward to hearing from you guys, because when we share, we work together, we do all these things, we also learn. We also become a much better person in the process, whether you're helping somebody or whether you're being helped, because we all are bits and pieces of things we learn from other people and experiences through our life. Once again, I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to working with you. Stay strong and live your life.